From Boca Raton, Florida, Rabbis Efrem Goldberg, Philip Moskowitz, and Josh Brody are taking you behind the Bima. The BRS rabbis schmooze about contemporary issues and talk to special guests who give a behind-the-scenes look at how they got to where they are and what keeps them going. Welcome to Behind the Bima.
Wait a second, who is this guy? This is not the rabbis. These are not the hosts. Hello, everyone. I am Matthew Miller, and I help to create the show. And I've brought to you today the first of two roundups of Behind the Bima, where we'll give a roundup, a compilation of some of the highlights of the first 30 episodes. Hope everyone enjoys.
So Michael doesn't fully understand, or he's just learning all about what had happened while he was on a ventilator for 22 days. It's going to take a long time for him to fully understand. I don't think I'll ever really be able to tell him exactly everything that happens. There are things that went behind the scenes that I don't even know what happened. There were so many people from our local and global Jewish community who had been rallying behind us and helping us along the way. So first, I just want to say thank you to everyone for helping us, for davening for us. Right after the first days of Pesach on April 11th, Michael got extubated. It took him a few days, about a week, to feel good enough to come home, and he came home on Sunday.
I remember before being intubated, they had me talk to Alana and tell her what was going on, that they were going to put me in a coma and intubate. I remember telling Alana that I really didn't want to do it. And she said, you have to do it because the doctors are telling you to.
Okay, so when Josh was growing up, he always had very, very strong leadership qualities. Like he was on regional board of NCSY, and he was his grade or school president, class president, I guess it is, at the JEC in Elizabeth. But I never, ever, ever thought that he'd be a rabbi. Actually, if you want the truth, we thought that he'd run off with some rock band, and yeah. So
you were probably my most mischievous and rambunctious child. And as you grew up, you were extremely witty and funny. I might even say a little crazy, a little zany. And these were never characteristics that I associated with the rabbinate. I didn't know any rabbis who were like this. But furthermore, as you got older, I saw in you a tremendous resourcefulness, getting things done, figuring out problems, jumping to take command.
He was actually, he also was mischievous. I guess there's something about rabbis needing to be a little mischievous when they're young, but he was also by far the most mischievous of my children. He was also the one who drew people toward him all the time. People just somehow wanted to follow him and be near him. So in that sense, I guess he had the makings of it. We all thought he was going to go into finance, make a lot of money, and support the rest of us for the rest of our lives.
I can honestly tell you that I wasn't very good at that, because I would listen to everybody and try to do something for everybody. But several years ago, maybe as much as 5 years ago, we more or less formalized amongst my wife and myself, and she became the president of our foundation. And she is much smarter and much more careful and much more insightful than I ever was or ever could be. So she has a methodology that she puts everything into buckets. So much for elderly care, so much for Jewish education, so much for things like the Jewish community centers, all of that type of stuff. She really does allocate. And I can't tell you how many different charities we get. I can tell you that she takes her job serious. She has a full-time financial person that works with her, and she reviews every single document that comes in, and she's very careful and very methodical, and she reviews the needs and she puts them into a bucket and she allocates funds amongst those buckets.
And our enemies teach us the most. Our enemy said, "Yeshno am echad mefuzar umefurad ben amim," right? The rabbis are like, wait, somebody hurry up. Where's that from? Where's that from?
Google. Megillah Esther.
So the Megillah Esther, and it's like there's one nation, but we're separated all over the place. And all of a sudden we came together to fight this. It's really to fight the disease that ravaged the Jewish communities,
Beautiful.
especially in the New York area. And you guys have this advantage. They are not looking for a joke from you. They're not looking for the joke from you. So they're already, all their guards are down. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen them on HBO, comedian Modi. Now they're like, make us laugh. You're just like, you walk up there, you drop your books, you this and that, you think for a minute, you adjust your yarmulke, and then you hit him with a joke. If it hits, it hits. If not, you just go right into the Gemara Shteitazoi.
My father told us many, many times that the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that when a king takes on the mantle of leadership, it's mitzvah sheyichtav lo sefer Torah. The Torah says he has to write a sefer Torah, v'karabo kol yemei chayav. He has to read in that sefer Torah every day of his life. That is supposed to be the guiding focus, the guiding light of every decision that he's going to make. And the Gemara says, what if his father was a king and his father passes away and now he takes over the mantle of leadership as a son, as a prince? Does he have to commission the writing of a new Sefer Torah, or can he use the one that was written by his father? And the Gemara says, no. Mitzvah lo sheyichtav mishalo. As children, my father always told us, without making any allusion to himself, he told us this Gemara, and he said, every son of a melech has an obligation to write his own Sefer Torah. And I didn't appreciate what he said until I got much older, when I understood that what he meant was that we all have an obligation, even though our father has a tremendous legacy and represents a tremendous Sefer Torah on his own. Each one of us have an obligation, mitzvah sheyichtav lo mishalo.
Have I ever experienced racism? Yeah, I think the first thing is that racism comes in different forms. It's no longer just someone calling you an N-word and chasing you down the street with a bat. It's a lot more covert. Growing up, I didn't realize how much of an effect this had on me, but a lot of times I would hear people say, wow, you're so eloquent for a Black person. When comparing me to like a figure, it was always, oh, wow, you speak like Martin Luther King. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like using this as an opportunity to be the reenactment of Rabbi Abraham Heschel and Dr. Martin Luther King. Like, this is our chance to reenact that picture, to reenact that moment of saying, for historical years, the African American community has stood by the Jewish community. Well, the Jewish community has stood by the African American community. This is our next chance that we have to do this, and it starts with educating ourselves, just educating and having conversations like these where we explain what Black people go through, because it's no longer are the years where many of us are scared of being, like I said, many of us are not scared of being called an N-word anymore.
The end of 1945, my grandfather returns to Cairo, this time schlepping the chief rabbi of then Palestine, the first chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Herzog. He schleps him. They go back to Cairo to try to convince the Jews in Cairo that they need to build yeshivas. So this is the legacy that I grew up with, whether it was from my grandfather, my father, my Rebbe Reb Noach, my other Rebbeim, is that we need a lot more Torah in the Jewish people. And if we ever get to the day where there won't be a child from Dan to Beersheba who doesn't know A, B, and C, the A, B's, and C's of Torah, we can have a conversation. Do we have enough or not? Or what was the exact intent? But we are so far from where we need to be as a people. We need 10,000 more Kollel families. We need them not only in Lakewood, we need them all over the world.
Look, my wife always jokes, but there's a famous poem in Chivi about somebody that wanted to live in the past. I think that I grew up in New York in the late 50s, early 60s, and I grew up, but from the beginning, I felt that I lived in Hungary in the shadow of the Yismach Moshe and Reb Shaila Kerstira. And I grew up feeling that there are only two possibilities. There's one possibility is the modern Orthodoxy that I was raised with, which is that's a beautiful world. That was one possibility. Or the other possibility was to go back in time. My connection to Chassidus, it doesn't any Jew could connect to Pnimis Torah through Nefesh Chaim and through the Gra and through the Ramchal, and it's 1,000,000% authentic Pnimis Torah. But what I had found is when looking into that world world consisted more of an iyun b'Torahs hapnimius, just the study of Torahs hapnimius. I wasn't looking just for the study, for the intellectual aspect of Torahs hapnimius. There's a part of Yiddishkeit. It's not just a matter of la'ayin, to think about and to study. I wanted to swim in Yiddishkeit. I wanted to swim in Pnimis Torah.
I think there's a very strong tradition in Judaism embodied, particularly in the Rambam, to combine appreciation and understanding of science as a gift from Hashem, wisdom, we say Chachma, Bina, Haskel, wisdom, knowledge, discernment, all of those are involved in gaining scientific information. And at the same time, there's a sense of humility. That we don't know everything in the world, that there are things beyond our understanding, and that we have to have a sense of hope and faith, which are also essential, I think, in Judaism, to have a sense of forces and powers that are beyond that of man.
The largest supporter in the hit, because we are listener supported, the largest supporter in my 36 years of JM and the AM is a non-Orthodox Jew, and most people don't even believe, and it's by far, it's not even close.
Wow.
So that's number one. A great Zionist who unfortunately passed away just a few months ago. And the other thing that comes to mind when you talk about the unity is that I went to pay again, I'm speaking about shiva calls. I went to pay a shiva call years ago to a very prominent philanthropist in the Jewish world, and I sit down in front of him, and he says to me, "Love your show, hate your politics." And I'm like, wow. Thank God that somebody who really is politically left-leaning and politically, certainly a two-stater, etc., still feels the importance of tuning in and being part of it by listening, each and every day.
Listen, I'm blessed with tremendous support. I had a great example from my parents. They were very dedicated to the Jewish community. They were tremendous Zionists, and that was the example I had. And I'm fortunate, to be of means, to have family that really supports not just personally, but all the causes that we're involved with. I have a full-throated family support around it, and I tell people all the time, and it's so true. You can't, when you give, you get so much more back than when you give out. And, it was kind of an expression even from my father and uncle, and the Yiddish expressions that we all know about the beauty of giving and so forth. So it's been, it's a labor of love.
I'm not a holy guy. I'm not a rabbi. I'm just a regular dude. And what I'm sharing is just how I feel about things, not necessarily what I've mastered. So if I say things that are about relationships that I'm still working on my own relationships. If I say things about parenting, I'm still working on my parenting. Like, I feel more than I win. I'm worse than I like to be. And I have so much more to accomplish in this world because I've done so little already with my life. And I'm just hoping Hashem doesn't lose faith in me. God, I know he won't because he's my dad. What?
You have a good failure to share with us?
everything, always, you know what I'm saying? Like every day, 100 times. Like I could always be a better husband. I'm a better dad. And the one thing that I try, and I'm not saying I succeed at this, is just to try to find things that motivate me to share.
That was a moment that I realized that we are in a real big trouble of a real pandemic. In New York, they were starting to talk about not having ventilators. I told the doctor, get me one right now before it's too late. And that day was Erev Shabbos. It was a week after Purim. And the doctors put me into a coma. It took 10 seconds. And I asked him, could I have a few minutes to just speak to my family before it was Shabbos in Israel. Right. I called my wife and kids and everyone. They're all in Atzela. Oh my wife runs out to emergencies all the time. I call her up 5 times till she answered finally. I said, Gitti, this is serious. They're putting me into a coma. They were inducing me into a coma. And she started crying. I said, listen, I'm going to be strong. You'll see. But on the other hand, I was very realistic. And I said, I said, I never really thought about maybe dying. I said, this could be the moment that I have to say goodbye, and I have to say goodbye to the kids. It was a very hard moment that I had to say goodbye to all my children. And I told them, listen, all these years you saw me running out to emergencies and helping. That should be your continuation of your life. Always do chesed. That's the most important thing for me.
It's the story of all of our lives. Anybody who's a giver, anybody who self-identifies as a helper and who strives to be someone who's part of the solution, so to speak, in any situation, beyond the palindrome of giving, there's the Aron would carry those who sought to carry it. And anyone who's in service of others knows this, that the more we give, the more we receive. And it's a privilege to be in service of others. There's no greater power, there's no greater connectivity that's generated in the world. There's no greater divine presence than that which is, created by 2 people working together. And, it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to recognize that this is beyond chesed. It's more, I'd say even beyond arevos. There's something here which is the magical connection between 2 people who are in service. Someone who's in service, and there's no question. There's no question. You have parents who are benefiting from respite. You have children and young adults who are benefiting from therapeutic service and medical services and lots of love. And as in every situation in our lives, the more we give, the more we grow.
When President Trump delegated Ambassador Friedman and Jared Kushner to open up our embassy in Jerusalem on May 14th, 2018, Senior Advisor Jared Kushner had a line there that was much ridiculed by those who were not interested in seeing the U.S. follow the law that had been on the books since 1995, which was to do 3 things. Number 1 is to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, December 2017, open up our embassy, May 14th, 2018, and move the ambassador's residence to Jerusalem, March of 2019, therefore being in full compliance of a law that had been on the books and for all intents and purposes had either been ignored or violated, depending on one's legal advice. We'll ask Donnie after the show, the law from 1995. But at that, there were so many really meaningful and powerful speeches that my kids at a young age still today will turn on and learn and be inspired by. But amongst them, Jared Kushner then gave the President Trump foreign policy philosophy. And he said that by moving and opening the embassy, today we are one step closer to peace.
WhatsApp we don't own WhatsApp. I don't own WhatsApp. So, WhatsApp was made so you can talk to your grandmother in Europe. It wasn't made so you could send a message to 30,000 people. You can rely on the Jews to go ahead and take that platform and turn it into that and to have 15,000 people viewing your WhatsApp status. But it's broadcastless, and we have, hundreds of them. And it's manual work, and it'll take on any given day 4 hours to send a minute out to every single one of our subscribers.
Wow.
We have the 2 phones at this point because one of the decisions I made from the beginning was, and I think this is a big part of the success. Of course, everything's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I think this part was, if anyone would ask, what do you think did it? I think it was made a decision in the beginning that we're doing 7 days a week. We're not missing Motzei Shabbos, this, that. We're doing it every single day.
Wow.
And we're in people's lives. We're consistent. And sometimes Shabbos would end at 9 o'clock, 9:15, and it'd take 5 hours to send it out. So there are times where I'd be sending out videos and it's 1, 2 a.m.
I think that secular pop music is the world of the 4 chords. AFCG, they call it. It's like these 4 chords that almost every single pop song has that mode written into it, that chord progression, as they call it. But I definitely experiment with music. I listen to genres from all around the world. I'm currently in a Turkish music phase. Please don't judge me. But they have some amazing, like, Tenielach, as they say in Yiddish, tenuas like that are unique to the region geographically that we wouldn't even consider musical over here, like the way that they bend notes and go from. I find that very inspiring to completely step out of your world that you're comfortable with and listen to music from other genres. And it actually helped me very much in my writing, that I stopped writing with a piano. I stopped writing with an instrument because I would have these muscle memory. I'd find myself doing the same patterns over and over again, and my songs were sounding very repetitious. And by listening to these other genres and writing without a piano, it sort of opened my mind like to a whole new potential.
And I know there are many rabbinic families where there's a lot of pressure, and there's the whole fishbowl thing, and there's the rabbi's kids and RSS, rabbi son syndrome. We talk about it all the time. There's all that kind of stuff. I think that one of the reasons why we were a little bit shielded from that was because of my father's positive attitude about everything. Like, my father just had such a positive attitude on the Jewish community. We never heard the dirt of the Jew. It's not like there wasn't dirt. There was dirt in school. There was dirt, and you always hear that. But we never felt that way. We felt like my father felt it was the greatest privilege in the world to serve the Jewish community. It was natural that we would go into those kinds of fields because we saw my father loving it, and my father enjoyed his role with the people. My father, I like retirement. That was a joke. My father was thrilled. He was 7. My father worked on the very last day of his life. All he wanted, he was the happiest guy in the world. That at 73, the yeshiva had renewed his contract for another 2 years. They were going to let him come and daven with the 6th grade and 7th grade boys for another 2 years.
And I told him about the sign I have in my office of Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof. I told him that there are many reasons that are given for the repetition, but the one I favored is that we don't know where justice is. We have to pursue it. We have to look for it. And when an opportunity is given to have justice in the courtroom, justice in the eyes of the defense counsel, justice in the eyes of the prosecutor, justice in the eyes of the judge and in the public, we have to thank him for giving us this opportunity.
I'm a contrarian by nature. It's just that's the way I was born. And you can imagine if you're a contrarian and you speak your truth and you don't care what everybody thinks around you and you have a lot of energy, that doesn't do very well in 8th grade, does it? So, the Gemara book that I wrote was part of the experience of having a very tough time in school with all of that. I'll tell you what I found. What I found is that speaking out is important. It's important to educate the people as you're advocating. That's just that would be my advice. If you want to get out on a limb and say something or do something that's dear to your heart and important, you have to bring the public along. During the Nehemiah Weberman trial, that was my gutsiest advocacy in my life so far. So there was a very high-profile abuse case in New York. There was a a non-licensed therapist working in Williamsburg who abused lots of people. And I was called by the DA and asked to stand to support the victim, that she was under enormous pressure. And I decided to jump in. And, I went to trial every day with the family, and it was a big deal.
Let me deal with this placebo issue because it's a very important issue. I was hauled onto 60 Minutes like 20 years ago, telling us, your dad will remember this. They said that it was they would call it a shanda, but they didn't use those words. That I would have a cure for Lou Gehrig's disease. This is a terrible disease, as you know, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And I'm giving people a placebo while other people are throwing away their canes. How can I live with myself? It's a very good question. The answer is that it's called equipoise. I don't know that we actually have a treatment until we study it. And the most valuable thing I can give to a patient is informative and science evidence-based decision, that evidence-based information allows them to reach a decision whether it might actually be helping them.
I mean, look, I think I'm a good husband. I think I'm a good dad. I try to be nice to people, but people are going to gather about me what they want to gather about me. I think, honestly, a lot of that does come out from the show. Like, if you listen to the show on a regular basis, I think a lot of this sort of stuff comes out. I make jokes about my wife and my kids all the time. I talk about, what we do on a daily basis. I think most of the impressions of me publicly come from, the way our social media works, which is these little tiny little snippets, right? Tweets or memes or 30 seconds clips from my show as opposed to the hour-long show. I know that's the complaint of everybody who's in media, is that you should actually listen to the whole show, but actually it's kind of true. You should actually look beyond the headline and listen to the whole show. As far as, some of the nice things that I do, it's not up to me to talk about that sort of stuff because, frankly, it's self-serving. And so, when we give tzedakah, I try to give tzedakah fairly anonymously. When we do nice things for people, I try to keep it on the down low, unless it's a very public campaign in which many people are involved, because otherwise, again, it's about, burnishing my image as opposed to anything else. If that helped get across a point, which is that I think that a religious worldview makes you a better person, which I think it absolutely can.
Judaism has separate roles for men and separate roles for women. And I am very proud to be a Jewish woman. I don't think that Judaism puts me in a second-class position. I don't think that the Torah puts me beneath men. We are different. And I would love to be called an Eshes Chayil. King Solomon writes about the woman of valor. And he says that she is strong, she's doing business overseas, she's up late at night. So the Torah values of women are the values that I can identify with. Now, I'm not here to say that women who haven't pushed for the women's right to vote, the suffragettes, or the women who have made it easier for women to get equal pay for their work. I'm all about women's empowerment and all about women being able to achieve and accomplish and reach goals that are shattering glass ceilings, but within the Torah framework. And feminism, because it's a secular concept, sometimes is counter to Torah values. So for me, the Torah is the guiding principle. For me, having faith, having a family, my children, my husband, my parents, all that is primary.
Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Stick around next time when we'll have the second roundup of Behind the Bima. On behalf of Rabbi Efrem Goldberg and other hosts, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay holy.